In the wealthiest country on the planet, healthcare and food security are a privilege, not a right. We see the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. And if you depend on social safety net programs such as Medicaid and SNAP, well, those benefits are always first on the chopping block, especially under an authoritarian regime. Today we're going to talk about that a little bit, as well as I'll teach you how to make a fermented ketchup. I'll be using hawthorn, but you could also substitute for many other fruits. Fermented foods are an excellent ally to have. It's an ancient food preservation method, and it's one of my favorite go-tos. Welcome to Misfit Grit. Isn't it appalling what it's come to in this country? It really is. Lawmakers shutting down the government, squabbling over healthcare. If we should have access to healthcare. Squabbling over if we should have access to food security. Are you kidding me? And this is considered normal in this country. This country is so obsessed with the toxic narrative of pull yourself up by your bootstraps. If you're poor, it's your fault. That we're literally cannibalizing ourselves. My family relies on SNAP, which is food stamps, WIC, which is for mothers with young children or pregnant women, as well as Medicaid. My 3-year-old daughter was kicked off of Medicaid about 3 months ago now because she's unemployed. We can't get a hold of an actual human being to sort this out, and we have reapplied multiple times. We just have to wait to see if this system will allow this little girl to go to the dentist. If we were to listen to the strong men in power who tell us that it's our fault for being poor, we're not good enough. If we were to listen to that narrative, that American narrative of toxic individualism, of trickle-down economics, all that stuff that the right is really about, then it distracts us from looking at who the actual perpetrators of this problem, this systemic issue are. And it's the rich guys. It's the lobbyists. It's all these enormous stakeholders, companies that are calling the shots and siphoning off money, making sure that we don't get things like healthcare anymore. We don't get things like social safety nets anymore. It's getting harder and harder just to get by, and we're told that it's our fault. Plenty of people buy into that narrative, and that's why we have who we have in the White House, right? They want a scapegoat. They want to say that it's because of immigrants. It's because of trans people, whatever they're trying to say, which is absolute garbage. It is the billionaires, the wealthy politicians. It is this crowd, these tech giants that are steadfast, focused on making you bent over a barrel and taking everything they can from you. When you think about it, it's truly maddening. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. In order for there to be radical change in the United States of America, the kind that could actually get the people have our needs met, we need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. We need to learn new skills. We need to think back to how our ancestors would have achieved these same goals. And we need to be ready to sacrifice. Doing this kitchen work is hard, and I do it by myself largely. With my children, my husband does help, and we forage a lot of our food. But having the ability to stay out of the big food systems, to stay out of the big failing medical systems, it makes it worth it for me. So today I'm going to show you how I make a type of ketchup, and I'll talk to you a little bit about the process of that and a couple other types of ketchup that I make. I make a few different types of ketchup. I make a mushroom ketchup, which is really good on steak and potatoes. This is the original ketchup coming from China. Really, really old, ancient stuff. My second son loves this. Mushrooms from our own garden. I make a fermented blueberry ketchup. We have a lot of blueberries up here in the Keweenaw, and so I make these every year. And I like to ferment my ketchups. That means I don't have to can them. And they're shelf stable, ready to go. I have 5 young children, so especially in the summer when we're eating lots of hamburgers and French fries and things like that, going on picnics, we go through a lot of ketchup. But today, I'm going to be working on making a hawthorn berry and apple ketchup. Now, I thought I was done processing apples, but thanks to the abundance and the wonderful place that we live, someone dropped off a big basket of cherry apples. And I worked with these a few weeks ago, and I made a delicious cherry apple butter. And I thought, well, let's combine them with, I had a gallon of frozen hawthorn that I had put in the freezer so I could deal with it when I had a little extra time. And I thought, let's combine these two, see what they taste like, and see if we can make a type of ketchup condiment. I have this Chinese 5-spice powder that I might try, although I am going to wait until it's mashed down and see if I think that that would be a good fit with the sugar. I haven't done that before, and this isn't a spice powder that I use frequently, so I'm going to play around with it a little bit, and we'll just see what we get. So my favorite method of cooking down fruit is my steam juicer. And if you do food processing, especially in large bulk, like I do, this thing is a lifesaver. So a few hours ago, I put in the cherry apples, and those have all cooked down. And I put in the hawthorns just a little while ago, and they are cooking down. Now, hawthorns don't have a lot of juice in them, but I thought that it would help smush them up. And then I thought I could run it through a food mill, which I'll show you. I have 2 different food mills. I have this one, and then my husband and some of my kids just brought home this one that they just picked up from an antique store for me, so I can get one of my older kids to work on this as well. So we're going to run that all through, and it'll smush everything out, it'll extract those seeds, and I think it will be a little bit easier to deal with. And what I like to do then is I can take this lovely juice and add it as needed to make it a little bit thinner, a little runnier, the consistency that I want, and then there's always a little bit of juice left over for the kids. So let's see how it goes. So I ended up with about 1.5 gallons of hawthorn and cherry apple puree. Food mills are a pain in the neck, as you can see. I try to avoid them as much as I can. But for this, you need them. To this has been cooked down in the steam juicer, so I don't even have to cook anything today. It's been in the freezer for a few weeks until I had time to do this, basically. But I am going to add this cooked onion. I put about 3-4 small medium onions in there. So I'm putting that onion in. I don't want to put too much, but I do like savory condiments. We're gonna add some apple cider vinegar. Now, raw would be best, but I don't have any right now, so this is just stuff from the store. And I'm gonna add in about 2 cups worth. Let's see how that gets us. I don't want to have to cook this down any further, so I don't want it to get too liquidy. It's already looking a little liquidy, so I might be getting myself into trouble here. My kids want it sweet. And this is maple syrup. You could use honey, you could use brown sugar, you could use different sweeteners, whatever you want. But I have maple syrup, being in Michigan, and my kids want it sweet. I personally don't care for sweet condiments, but this is for the kids. So while this is stirring up, I'll tell you about fermented foods and why I enjoy them so much. So fermented foods are alive. There's active cultures in them, and it's also a way to preserve food. It's ancient. It's stuff our ancestors did. Lots and lots of cultures do it and have lots of different ways of doing it, but it's alive. So you see and you hear about probiotics, and you take this capsule and you, whatever they do, whatever they're trying to get you to buy, this is how you get probiotics in your food, and it also makes it shelf stable. So if you're not a canner, like I also do a lot of canning, but if you don't want to can, this is a way that you can make condiments especially, but plenty of other things that is shelf stable. And you don't need all the equipment to preserve food. Okay. I'm going to add my spices, and I'll probably add more maple syrup because, you know, again, for the kids. So we're going to add a little zippy zip to it, a little bit of cayenne. I'm going to put in about a teaspoon of cayenne. I have quite a bit here, so you want to scale that way, way, way down. I'm going to put in about, let's see, this is allspice, so I'll put in a teaspoon of allspice. I chose not to use the Chinese 5-spice powder. That would have been way too strong with hawthorns and then these cherry apples, which both have strong flavors, and the Chinese 5-spice powder would have just been really, really strange with it, I thought. So, and I'm going to put in a tablespoon of cinnamon. All right, so you have to add a starter culture to start a new batch of fermentation. And this is my blueberry ketchup. And as you can see, I have about a pint in there. Half a quart, about a pint. And I'm just going to put that whole thing in. Because what I would normally do is add about a tablespoon per quart, maybe a little more. But since this is so much, boom, we're just going to add it right in there. This I made I made this about 3 months ago now. It sits in the refrigerator, or it can sit in a pantry or a basement, somewhere cool enough out of the direct sunlight. You don't want to store your foods right above the stove or something. And it's just hanging out. This is our blueberry ketchup from all the blueberries that we get up here. And I'm going to stir that up. Probiotic foods, live foods, fermented foods are so important to your gut health, which is a part of your immune system. All that stuff starts down in your gut, your immune system. And you'll notice people who have really poor diets, they struggle with all of those, IBS and all those gut problems. And they also get sick all the time. And I've always found it sort of peculiar how they don't seem to link all that together. But many of them don't. But I'm telling you, this is the type of food that keeps you healthy. It just gets that immune system a little bit of a boost whenever you eat it. It's good to eat fermented foods. Just a tablespoon or a teaspoon for a child a day, a meal, is excellent. That's really all you need. You don't need to just guzzle this down, Just a little bit every day, a few times a day if you can. I'm going to add more sweetener. Because, the kids. Okay, here we go. I'm going to add, another cup's worth. Maybe a little over. That was over a cup. Again, it's for the kids. And I forgot our salt. So when you ferment foods, you want to use non-iodized salt. Iodine kills living creatures, and you want this alive. You want that good bacteria doing its thing. So I use Redmond real salt, but you can find other products. So I'm putting in like 4 or 5 teaspoons there. We'll give it another stir. Yeah, that's ketchup. I'm gonna keep it as is. Personally, I would like it a little more acidic, maybe a little spicier. But as I'm not the main ketchup consumer in the house, I think my kids will really like this. And now I'm just gonna bottle it up, and I'll have it sit out for a day on the counter just to get it started at room temperature. And then I can move it to the refrigerator. I have a refrigerator in my barn that I hold all of my fermented foods when it's not the depths of winter, and we're not there yet. It's just November. So I can hold it there for a couple months, and then we'll see what's left, and I'll bring stuff in, and I'll have to shuffle around a little bit, but it can sit there for a while. So there we go. So you can see here we ended up with 6.5 quarts. So these are shelf stable now. They'll sit out on the counter for a day, and then I will put them in the refrigerator, like I said. You don't have to have the exact starter culture. Like, you don't have to have a jar of fermented ketchup already going in order to start a new batch. You can use a little bit of whey from yogurt. You could use the brine from a raw sauerkraut or some raw kombucha, something like that. You can use a little bit of just to get that fermentation process going. So don't worry if you don't have this laying around to get started fermenting foods. So I chose to use hawthorns in this because hawthorns are very prevalent where I live. They are amongst a lot of the old mining ruins. And here's a little bit of they're a little dried now because the frosts have come and it's late in the season, but this is what they look like. They're in the rose family, and they do have thorns on them. And you can make a lot of condiments with them. You can make drinks, and they're used in the British Isles. It's a lot more common over there, and that's how I first learned about it, and looking up like, well, what is this plant and how can I use it here where I live in the Keweenaw? We head into the holiday seasons. I hope that you are healthy and well. You're able to access the resources that you need, the healthcare that you need, and the food that you need. I hope that there are systems in place in your community to help you out if you need them. So take care of yourselves and someone else if you can. We'll see you next time.